Okay, so we're starting into the process of setting up your development environment. And depending on the course you're taking, I'm going to make recommendations for what you might think about when you're doing this, because there's two options. You can either do it local, which means you're installing some software on your local system and then you're running everything local and pushing it to GitHub, which you'll learn about starting into this next item. Or you'll be using codespace, which is already out on the cloud, not local, but you'll be doing the same thing in this sense as that you're doing work in your code space and then you're pushing it to GitHub. Okay? Here's my general recommendation. If you're taking 28, generally I would say use codespace. Okay? And the reason would be is that for students taking database, you're using SQLite. You can install it locally, but it's a little more of a setup than students who are new to these kind of coding classes are ready for. Okay, and again, not that you can. If you have some experience, you totally can. If you're in 82, I recommend, let's go back. If you're in 82 in this case, all right, that's the next one. Oh, let me go back here. There we go. If you're in CIT 82, oh, you know what? My cat's sitting on my keyboard. I bet you've never had that happen. If you're in 82, I actually recommend local because part of what you're learning in 82 is how to be in the web development area. And so in that case, learning how to set up a local dev environment is a good skill to have. And so that's because of the content. And if you're in CIT 93 JavaScript, I generally also do recommend local. Now, some students taking JavaScript may not be in web development. So in that case, you may not want to go through all of the setup. Now, when I say all of, I'll show you in a minute, there's a couple more steps, but in general, it should be similar in the, it's similar in the logic. But you'll see the difference in a minute. But here's the deal. I offer this content because I want students to have choices, because there's a benefit to working local. And I talk about this as we get into the code space, is that code space has a limited amount of time per month. I've only had a couple of students hit up against this, and I'll talk about ways to minimize your time, and I'll talk about ways to upgrade the amount of, I think you get 120 hours base, but if you verify you're a student, you can actually get, I think, up to 160, maybe 180. I can't quite determine that, but I know that there's a benefit to doing that. Now, CodeSpace is generally easier. So if you're new to developing or doing anything on your local system or running command line, you might want to do this. Although even doing CodeSpace, you're going to learn about command line. Okay, so now that you have this, now you might say, well, which one is right for me? And the answer is, it depends on you. And it depends on your environment. So having a code space is nice because no matter where you're at, as long as you can get onto GitHub, you can code. And if you mostly work local, then you don't have to worry about this time that the hours that tick up. But again, I've only had a couple of students run out, and this 120 hours gets reset every month. So now let's look at the content. So the video you're watching is the overview video. So what I've done is I've organized this content to show, because there are some steps that no matter what option you select, you will do. And this is step 1, complete on GitHub. Okay, so you'll click here, right? And you'll come to this content. You'll watch this video, right? And then I've also provided links to return, so you can just kind of look through here if you want. If you're doing local, so then you're installing software, you're cloning, you're configuring, and you're doing workflow. Okay, and then if you're on CodeSpace, you're creating your code spaces, and then you're doing the workflow. And you might think, well, these are the same. Well, I actually recorded them the same first time through, and then I decided, nah, I'm actually going to do them separate because there are some kind of unique things. But here's the cool thing. Like, if I was to come back to this for a second, you could, if you kind of just wanted to get started, just set up a code space, okay? But eventually I would tell you based on my recommendations from before. Now, if you start on CodeSpace and decide to do local, then you have the additional step of managing two different file locations. And you might want to come talk to me, which generally I recommend coming to talk to me generally just so you know how to get support, or go talk to the tutor for 82 and 93. Okay, but in general, I recommend making sure you're comfortable with whatever one you've done, and then if you want to look at the other, because there may be a situation. I could see this situation. I am a student. I set it up local, but I happen to be traveling, and I'm like, oh, you know what? I have some work to do tonight. Maybe I can just fire up a code space. Well, if you do that, but you have changes that you had locally that you didn't push, that can cause what we call a conflict. Now, it's easy to fix those conflicts, but as you're new to this stuff, that can throw you off. So just make sure if you're in situations like that, you reach out and get help so that you make sure you're prepared for that. And then vice versa. Maybe you started with CodeSpace, but then you're like, you know what? I got a new computer. I want to work locally. I don't want to have to think about the time. Then you can switch to this. But again, and then for students in 28, you could actually, and reach out to me, I could show you the command to see if you have SQLite already loaded on your system. And therefore, maybe this is a nice option. Okay, so again, because I'm trying to do these videos as kind of a generic overview, if you have specific questions, please reach out. Okay, now I have provided content here for if you're running Mac. I didn't talk about it too much. I realized, as a matter of fact, what happened was I've recorded all these videos, and now I'm going back and doing the first one to kind of fill in any gaps. So the last thing I will say here is that based on the course that you're in, you will have a next item that you will need to do for the course. So this content is generic. You'll go on to the next item to get what you need to do for the next item in here. Okay? All right, so the first thing, no matter what one you choose, right, I could have used the return to, but no matter which one, you will go in here. And oh yeah, this is important. The videos I recorded were actually specific to 93, only because I wanted to use one class consistently, but this is going to be true for 82 and for 28. So just make the modification in your head as you're going in there. Oh yeah, Rio said she recorded this specifically for her JavaScript class, but this content is also completely relevant for whichever class you're in. All right, hope this helps you out. Let's get started.